It's unusual to have this kind of breaking news a few weeks ahead of the NFL draft, but the Minnesota Vikings have breaking news. And the Minnesota Vikings have finally scheduled a private workout with Jayden Daniels. Finally! And hey, while you're here, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button on YouTube, that bottom right hand corner of the screen, I'm kind of pointing right at it right now, right there. You hit that subscribe button? Thank you, appreciate that. Well, the Minnesota Vikings finally made it happen. Jayden Daniels, the Heisman winner from LSU, is finally meeting with the Minnesota Vikings in a private workout. That's been the whole thing this offseason, leading up to the NFL draft, is private workouts. The Minnesota Vikings worked out privately J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr. I don't think they did it for Bo Nix. They didn't do it for Caleb Williams, but now they're finally doing it for Jayden Daniels. And the likelihood that Jayden Daniels even falls to the Minnesota Vikings in the first place, which is most likely going to be number 4 or number 5 overall, is not very high, because I don't think the Vikings can trade at that number 3 overall pick. I think the Patriots want a quarterback. They're not going to trade to that number 2 overall pick because the Commanders need a quarterback. And it seems like all signs have been pointing towards the Washington Commanders selecting Jayden Daniels with the number 2 overall pick. Now, there are these random reports that J.J. McCarthy is higher on draft boards than people anticipated, that J.J. McCarthy is sneaking up these boards, that Cliff Kingsbury, the Washington Commanders' new offensive coordinator, loves J.J. McCarthy. And the reason why the Minnesota Vikings are going to meet with Jayden Daniels in the first place is simple. If he does fall somehow, some way, past the Commanders, past the Patriots, to that number 4 overall pick, is that the guy the Minnesota Vikings should invest their future in? Because if you're going to select a quarterback in the top 4 or top 5 of the NFL draft, you need to know everything about that player, because your careers are on the line. The Minnesota Vikings franchise and the future of the franchise is on the line with this quarterback selection in this year's NFL draft. So you need to go through all necessary steps to make sure that you are going to select a quarterback that's worth trading multiple first-round picks, maybe 3, to draft a guy like Jayden Daniels. Now, my likely quarterback options are this, in terms of which way it's going to go in this year's NFL draft. J.J. McCarthy is most likely number 1. Drake May is most likely number 2. Michael Penix Jr. is most likely number 3, and Jayden Daniels is most likely number 4. I just don't see any way that the Commanders don't draft a guy like that who has such explosive playmaking abilities as a quarterback, a guy who threw for over 40 touchdowns and barely had any interceptions, his Heisman Trophy year with the LSU Tigers. This guy's a beast. And he was a beast in college. And even if he takes time to develop as a passing, throwing quarterback in the NFL, he still has other playmaking ability, like running around for a bunch of different first downs, which gives a team so many different options, especially a team like the Washington Commanders, who don't really have an identity anywhere. They need a guy. They need a superstar guy, a guy that can completely change and overcompensate for things that they're lacking in their franchise, and Jayden Daniels has that ability. J.J. McCarthy, that ability is questionable. Drake May might have that ability, but Jayden Daniels clearly has that playmaking ability to completely shift and change the course of a franchise. And I do believe that the Vikings want Jayden Daniels, want Drake May. They're probably going to draft J.J. McCarthy because that's who they're going to get stuck with drafting, because they know they need a quarterback. And I do believe that some of the interest in Jayden Daniels is what they saw from Josh Dobbs last year. Josh Dobbs was explosive for 2 games. The game against the Falcons, the game against the Saints. And I believe that he opened the eyes in the Minnesota Vikings organization to what a mobile quarterback could do in Kevin O'Connell's offense and with the weapons around him. I believe that you pair, that playmaking ability that Josh Dobbs had, and then you get a guy that can also throw the football, like Jayden Daniels, and I think that's a match made in heaven for Kevin O'Connell and for the Minnesota Vikings organization. Now, J.J. McCarthy, he actually has athletic ability. He can move a little bit, but it's nowhere near Dobbs's or Daniels' ability. But that's just a theory. I believe that Dobbs's presence, what he showed the Vikings in 2 games, kind of gave them an itch for something more. So I do believe that if they have a chance to draft Jayden Daniels, they definitely would do it. Number 4 or number 5 overall. But it's exciting stuff because finally, we've heard, for weeks that the Vikings are trying to meet with Jayden Daniels, and Daniels' camp doesn't want to meet with the Vikings, and oh my gosh, what's going on here? Does he not want to be a Minnesota Viking? But we have LSU player Justin Jefferson on, like why? Like what's going on here? Like why doesn't he want to play for the Vikings? Purple, he played for purple for LSU, played for the purple Minnesota Vikings. Like what's going on here? Well, it sounds like he's finally meeting with the Minnesota Vikings next Thursday, according to Darren Wolfson. So, exciting things ahead for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how that goes. Thank you for listening. Again, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you're watching there, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please rate, review, and follow this podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast. Everyone, take care, and thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. Tell your friends.